has released an official protein shake. I believe it's called something like Asbiri. And they have a slogan that goes like this: "Будет круче, чем в Буче." It will be cooler than in Bucha, they say. It will be better than in Bucha. Now, with everything that we've already said in our rally today, and with all the rallies that we've done in the past, we know what the Russian terrorist regime has done in Bucha. The lowest of the low went there to do the worst crimes humanity has ever seen in its history. And then, the neo-Nazi group of Rusich, whose leader, by the way, has released a protein shake. It will be cooler than in Bucha, they say. Будет круче, чем в Bucha. Now that, my friends, is quite a disgusting thing indeed. On the open, the Russian terrorist regime and all of their troops, they will scream and shout at the Russian terrorist regime. For they are not stopping in Ukraine, they are not stopping in Moldova, they're not stopping in Belarus and any other country. They will continue for as long as they can until they are stopped. It's as simple as that. We fully support the investment in the British military that is happening right now. We believe that that is the right thing to do. And all the people who oppose this armament of the United Kingdom, they're either fools or traitors of this country. Because the armament of the United Kingdom is of utmost importance to make sure that this country is not bullied around by past powers like Russia, obsolete countries, countryside criminal syndicates, such as the Russian terrorist regime. That is why the United Kingdom needs to be strong. That is why the United Kingdom needs to be active on the world stage. Isolation is suicide nowadays. And we stand completely against that. Truly, my friends, sometimes we find people who went to show support to the Russian terrorist regime in front of the Imperial War Museum. How interesting. And now here you are, my friends, standing for Palestine. That is interesting. That's an interesting turn of events. I don't want to be trying to shame anyone, but who am I kidding, my friends? Some acts are shameful, whether they are called out as such or they're not. Now, all of you know very well that we went to counter-protest against the terrorist supporters who came on 9th of May to the Imperial War Museum with Russian flags, with Russian Z swastikas, with Russian Colorado beetle ribbons, to show support for the Russian terrorist regime, to show opposition for this country. Question rises. If a person loathes this country to such an extent, why suffer living in it? Why not go to a country they prefer? Many people who are in this city, they were migrants. They came here because they wanted to be here. It's a fair reason. Now, why would someone who hates this country remain here, suffering? I do not understand that, my friends. I have migrated from Portugal. I don't think there's any problem with that. I think anyone can migrate to the place that they like to be in. Why don't the Russia supporters, why don't the Russophiles, why don't the Putin supporters migrate to Russia? That's a good question. That's a question they did not answer. Another question they did not answer is, whose side did the Soviet Union start World War II on? They started World War II, my friends, on the side of Nazi Germany. That is a well-known fact, but apparently not well-known enough. People should be more aware that back in the day, the Soviet Union was willing and able to help Nazi Germany. In fact, they helped them far more than the Italians did, far more than the Japanese did. For the Japanese were on the other corner of the world, and the Italians were incompetent in World War II. But the Soviets, they gave the Nazi war machine all of the prime materials they needed. They have enabled Hitler to expand into France. They have enabled Hitler to have what he needed to invade the Soviet Union itself. The Soviet Union has made that possible, and they have done so willingly. In fact, they have begged Hitler to allow them to join the Axis powers, which Hitler answered with silence. He did not answer. He did not want to answer because he was preparing an invasion, the Operation Barbarossa.
А це
And
Фейсбук
we need to
зараз.
know this, my friends. We cannot be ignorant in the face of the facts. The Soviet Union was on the same side as Nazi Germany until a war started between them. Every socialist party in Europe and in the free world was preaching non-interventionism
А ти
when
хочеш
Hitler
сьогодні
was invading
поспілкуватися з
Poland.
ботами?
Every single one of them was screaming and shouting, let's not attack Hitler, Hitler has done nothing to us. But all of them, my friends, were traitors to the countries where they were. They did not see as their main priority to help the interests of the country that they lived in. They saw as their main priority the interests of the Soviet Union. It was an enemy country always. And Russia will always be an enemy of this great country, of Great Britain. That is a fact, my friends. And we are willing and able to explain and show the proof of why it is as such. All the support of the Soviet Union needs to be condemned as support for terrorists, for a terrorist regime. And now, the heir of that terrorist regime, the modern-day Russian terrorist regime, continues the legacy, the bloody legacy of genocide and extermination of the Soviet Union continues with modern-day Russia. That is why, my friends, we are here. That is why we say, Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is a terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Stop Russia, stop the war.
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 Fight the jets for Ukraine.
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 Air defense 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 for Ukraine.
Long-range missiles 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 for Ukraine.
Let Ukraine strike back.
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 More sanctions on Russia.
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 Seize Russian assets.
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 Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russia war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russia war criminals.
Tribunal for Russian war criminals.
Tribunal for Russia war criminals.
My friends, it needs to be said